The wreck drifted like a corpse in a coffin of stars. Elian Rourke leaned back in the cracked pilot's seat of the Perseverance, chewing on a protein stick that claimed to taste like smoked salmon but had more in common with burnt shoelace. Through the smeared canopy of his ship, the mangled freighter loomed, another casualty from the War of the Spiral Reach, or maybe just a drunken transport captain who miscalculated a jump by a few million kilometers. Either way, it was scrap now. And scrap meant pay. Perseverance, begin autolock sequence, Elian muttered. The ship groaned like a reluctant old man being asked to do squats. Elian gave the dashboard a fond slap. Come on, girl, we've done worse. The salvage cables shot out, metallic snakes latching onto the twisted hull. He watched as the wreck reeled closer, spinning gently. The freighter's outer plating had bubbled from plasma fire, its markings half-scorched, but one glyph still shimmered faintly in red. Luxtara 7, People First Logistics. Elian snorted. Guess they put people second this time. His scanners pinged. Energy readings, faint, but anomalous. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes broken reactors still hummed. Sometimes bugs from alien worlds nested in cooling systems. Once, he found a cultist locked in cryosleep next to a dozen frozen goats. That one made the news. He suited up, sealed his helmet, and crossed into the wreck. Airlock to airlock. Magnetic boots clicked on every step. Inside, darkness sprawled in shattered corridors, lit only by his suit's lamp. Ghosts of heat signatures flickered on his visor. No life. Just echoes. Then a glint, white and clean, too pristine to belong here. An escape pod. Elian blinked. Most pods ejected in emergencies. This one had lodged itself into a corridor wall, wedged in like a bullet half-finished in flight. He approached carefully, eyes scanning the sleek outer shell. No human make. Not even close. The design was organic. It shimmered under his lamp, subtle lines pulsing like veins. Not just alien, elegant. Elian to Perseverance, he said into the mic, found something weird. When don't you? Replied the ship's AI, Tinny. She was self-written and mostly sarcastic. Elian had built her during a particularly lonely 3-month drift around the moons of Phalera 6. Patch a gravity net around this. I'm hauling it in. You're not going to open it, are you? Just want a peek. You said that about the time cube on Ventos. You aged 3 years in one afternoon. Good thing I moisturize. Back aboard his own ship, Elian wrestled the pod into the cargo bay. Its surface was cool, smooth. He traced the etched script with a gloved finger, unreadable, yet faintly musical, like the sound of glass tapping underwater. He pressed a hand against a panel. It pulsed. Then it opened. A hiss of pressure. Soft light spilled out. Inside, curled in a fetal position, was a woman. No. Not a woman. A being. Humanoid, yes. But other. Her skin was pale silver, not like paint but like a second moon had taken flesh. Her hair floated gently in the pod's lingering stasis field, cascading in slow ripples. And her ears, long, elegant arcs that swept upward like the wings of a listening bird. She looked human in the way poetry resembled speech, familiar, but translated from something older and stranger. Elian stared. Well. Hello, sleeping beauty. Her eyes snapped open. Then she punched him. He staggered backward, crashing into a crate of expired rations. The alien woman leapt from the pod with the grace of a cat, if cats could telepathically project images of fire into your frontal lobe. Pain knifed behind his eyes. He groaned. I hate humans, she spat, her voice laced with an accent he couldn't place, a little like thunder filtered through silk. Duly noted, Elian wheezed. But you might want to hate me after I save your life next time. Her stance was defensive. Her eyes, like mercury under flame, darted around the cargo bay. She spotted the open hatch, then him, then the walls, calculating. He could almost hear the options whirring through her mind. Fight. Flee. Kill. Then her stomach growled. It was a loud, distinctly unimpressive sound for someone who had just attempted to melt his cerebral cortex. I have food, he said quickly, pointing to the galley. Human food, granted. But edible. Mostly. You're welcome to scan it, vaporize it, or toss it at my face. Whatever builds trust. She stared. Then, without a word, she marched past him into the galley. Elian followed, limping. I'm Elian, by the way. Elian Rourke. Salvager. Part-time mechanic. Full-time sarcasm generator. No reply. She sniffed the air suspiciously. He handed her a sealed ration pack. She sniffed that too. Then bit into it without hesitation. Elian winced. That's, you might want to chew slower. That one's from a shipment labeled emergency use only. Not for consumption on days ending in Y. Still no reply. But she ate it. The whole thing. With something that might have been a glare of gratitude. You got a name? He asked. Names are irrelevant, she said, swallowing. Can I call you Princess Ears? Her long ears twitched. You may call me Vera. Sounds oddly human. It's not. I like it. I didn't ask. Elian leaned back, watching as Vera inspected the spoon like it might explode. She was precise, graceful, and clearly capable of rearranging his spine. But she hadn't attacked again. That was something. So, Vera, would you like to tell me why you were packed into a biological capsule inside a wrecked human freighter that hasn't broadcast a signal in 7 years? She looked at him flatly. No. Okay, good chat. He offered her coffee. She sniffed it, frowned, and poured it into a potted algae plant. The plant wilted immediately. I warned you it was strong, Elian muttered. She sat, stiff and coiled like a spring. Her eyes never stopped moving, absorbing every creak of the ship. This place is primitive. Yeah, he said proudly. And she still flies. Mostly. I've got duct tape in 5 colors. Her lip almost quirked upward. Almost. As the minutes passed, the tension in her shoulders began to ease. She didn't smile. But she didn't stab him either. That was progress. Later, when she finally yawned, just the faintest flicker of weariness in her alien poise, Elian gestured toward the padded bench. You can sleep there. It doesn't fold out or sing lullabies or anything. But it's softer than the floor. She didn't respond. But an hour later, as he piloted the Perseverance toward the nearest trade station, a weight pressed gently against his arm. Vera had fallen asleep. Her head rested against his shoulder, hair brushing his collar. Her long, strange ears twitched once. Then stilled. Elian didn't move. Outside, the stars burned quietly. And inside, the words she had spoken, I hate all humans, hung awkwardly in the air, softened by the warmth of trust she hadn't meant to offer. Vera did not wake gently. One moment she was slumped on Elian's shoulder, breathing evenly, her long silver lashes fluttering with dream static. The next, she jerked upright with the intensity of a war siren. Her hand flew to her hip, out of habit, clearly, because there was no weapon there. Just a half-crushed protein bar wrapper and Elian's slightly startled face. Morning, sunshine, he said. Sleep well. You drooled a little. Sparkly. Kind of pretty, honestly. Like radioactive syrup. She blinked. Twice. Her ears twitched violently. I do not drool. Let's check the flight recorder. She scowled. You're impossible. And you're awake. Which is progress. She stood, stretching slowly, her long limbs fluid and unervingly elegant. Her silver skin caught the low lighting, refracting faint hues of violet and gold like oil on water. She regarded the ship with the vague distaste of someone forced to live inside a storage closet. What is that smell? She asked. Depends. The engine coolant leaks sometimes. Also, I haven't done laundry since the comet detour. That was 3 weeks ago. 4. You're a walking biohazard. Not walking, thank you. Flying. With charm. She muttered something in her own language, which sounded suspiciously like a creative insult involving reptiles and engine grease. The Perseverance cruised through a calm corridor of space now, blue streaks of light dancing along the hull as they approached the Cygnus drift station. Vera gazed out the viewport with narrowed eyes, arms folded. That's a trading moon, she asked. Drift Station 9. Where capitalism and mold grow side by side. You'll love it. I already don't. I'll buy you something shiny. I'm not a house pet. You punched me yesterday. You woke me from stasis. You still drooled. Her ears folded flat for a split second, and Elian smirked in quiet victory. The station loomed ahead, an old mining moon retrofitted into a floating bazaar. Its surface was an architectural disaster, mismatched modules, solar panels clumsily patched with scrap metal, glowing signage in 7 alphabets. Ships of every shape and size hovered nearby, including a cargo skiff that looked like it had been designed by a drunk spider and a barge with a rotating garden dome spinning wildly out of sync. As they docked, Elian handed Vera a cloak. You'll want to cover those Ilarian ears. No offense, they're conspicuous. She inspected the garment with suspicion. This reeks of fermented sock. That's the fashion here. Blend in. Why would I want to blend in with your kind? Because if you don't, someone's going to try to sell you to a biotech collector for a decent crate of anti-aging juice. Vera's lip curled, but she draped the cloak over herself anyway, the hood casting her sharp features in shadows. Elian gave her a thumbs up. Perfect. You look exactly like someone plotting a galactic assassination. Nobody'll notice. Inside the station, chaos ruled. The air was thick with unfamiliar spices, ozone, and burnt circuit board. Vendors shouted from booths built of scrap hulls. Holographic signs advertised everything from gravity-proof boots to emotional support slugs. A man walked by holding a bouquet of singing mushrooms. One tried to bite Vera. She bared her teeth, and it immediately wilted. This place is absurd, she muttered. That's the drift. Equal parts useful and unhinged. Elian led her past a corridor labeled Zone 3, Organic Commodities, where a trio of Carthan twins were arguing over the ethics of edible clones. He stopped at a booth run by a woman with 6 mechanical arms and 1 very judgmental cybernetic eye. Marla. Got anything in the way of stasis core stabilizers? Or maybe a new hydrofiltration ring that doesn't smell like wet carpet? Rourke, she said, scanning him up and down. Still flying that scrap bucket? Thought you'd have drifted into a black hole by now. Nearly did. Twice. Next time, do us all a favor and don't miss. Elian grinned. Ah, I missed your personality, too. While they bantered, Vera wandered slightly, drawn to a nearby stand displaying glimmering shards of tech. An elderly merchant tried to sell her something called a thought crystal. When she asked what it did, he replied, enhances your dreams and taxes your memories. She raised a brow. Sounds like a bad relationship. She was admiring a piece shaped like a fractured sphere when someone brushed too close. A hand dipped into the folds of her cloak. In a blur, Vera whirled, seized the pickpocket's wrist, and twisted it back at an angle that made even Elian wince from 5 meters away. The thief, a wiry teenager with too many cybernetic implants and not enough common sense, yelped. I was just. You touched me, Vera hissed. Her voice dropped a degree. Do you know what we do to thieves on Ilari? Vera, Elian called carefully. Remember the blending in thing? Low profile. Not terrifying the locals. She released the boy, who ran off sobbing. A nearby security droid began to hover over. Elian cursed. Okay, time to go. Quickly. Casually. Not like we're fleeing justice. Vera gave him a long look. I am fleeing justice. Well, then think of this as practice. Back on the ship, Elian threw the new parts onto the bench and collapsed into the pilot's seat. That, he said, went better than expected. You didn't melt anyone's mind. I considered it. And chose mercy. That's growth. Vera sat across from him, unwrapping another ration bar with disdain. These taste like compressed regret. They're actually labeled that. It's a brand. She took a bite anyway. For a while, they drifted in relative silence. Vera inspected the new stabilizer. Elian toyed with the flight controls, pretending he didn't notice the way she now sat closer than she had before. He broke the silence. So. You going to tell me what you were doing in that pod? No. Figured. She looked at him, long and hard, like trying to determine whether he was more threat than fool. Then, finally, she said, I didn't intend to survive. Elian blinked. That's dark. She shrugged, almost imperceptibly. My people are gone. Or scattered. And those who remain believe I betrayed them. Did you? I told them the truth. Oof. Yeah, people hate that. She stared out at the stars again. I didn't mean to end up here. With you. I mean, no one plans to end up with me. I'm more of a cosmic accident. Her mouth twitched. Just a fraction. Not a smile, not quite. But something lighter. Elian, she said slowly. You're unlike any human I've ever met. I'll take that as a compliment. You shouldn't. But I will anyway. And for the first time, she didn't correct him. Outside, the drift station shrank into the distance, and the stars stretched ahead like open roads. The Perseverance cruised through the fragmented trade lanes of Sector Juno 9, weaving between forgotten satellites, drifting cargo husks, and the occasional grav-sheared asteroid that looked suspiciously like it was giving them the finger. Elian had once read somewhere that space was vast, empty, and silent. Whoever wrote that had clearly never taken Vera shopping. Explain this again, she said, arms crossed and voice laced with barely restrained indignation. You paid 600 credits for this? Elian glanced at the object in question, a small, humming cube resting on the console. It was transparent, pulsing faintly with green light, and emitted a sound like a choir of sleepy frogs. He sipped his lukewarm coffee before replying. Technically, it's a self-learning navigation assistant that doubles as a mood lamp and occasional paperweight. It's vibrating, Vera noted. It's thinking. It just tried to roll itself into the airlock. Curious little guy. You were swindled. Elian sighed. You try saying no to a cybernetic jellyfish with 6 sales tentacles and a sob story about his kid's dental bills. She gave him a look that could have frozen fire. He shrugged. Besides, it's not the weirdest thing I've bought. There was that singing toothbrush on Ferrix that predicted solar flares. Very inaccurate, but catchy. She turned back to the cube, poking it once with a long, elegant finger. It purred. Loudly. Elian grinned. See? It likes you. It should fear me. It probably does. That's why it's purring. The ship jolted slightly as they entered a new orbit, a rough one. Warning beacons blinked on the NAV screen, and a digital voice calmly informed them they were now in a lightly patrolled, moderately unstable, and historically combustible region of space. Elian frowned. Why is that always the route that pays best? Because only idiots take it. Hey. I'm a professional idiot. I trained for this. They were en route to the Kars relay station. An abandoned interstellar relay node turned semi-legal market for exotic tech and the occasional blacklisted book of poetry. The last time Elian had been there, he'd left with a faulty gravity boot, a hangover that defied physics, and a parrot that swore in 6 languages. He missed the parrot sometimes. The station came into view, a crumbling ring of metal tethered to a dying satellite, its outer edge flickering with old neon in alien script that translated loosely as, "All deals final, especially the bad ones." As they docked, Vera adjusted her cloak again, though by now the station's denizens were too eclectic to notice an Alari blending in. A creature shaped like a melted harp floated by. A trio of Martokian priests recited algorithms in unison while balancing on a single leg. No one cared who or what you were on Kars, so long as you didn't leak fluid or start a religious war. This place smells like burnt software and despair, Vera muttered. Ah, brings back memories. They wandered past stalls of blinking tech, implausible devices, and creatures in jars that occasionally tapped the glass to protest their living arrangements. Vera stopped at a vendor selling weapon modifications, her eyes gleaming faintly. Don't even think about it, Elian warned. We're here to trade, not start a skirmish. I'm browsing. You're hovering. That's one step from disintegration. She moved on, reluctantly. In the station's central hub, Elian located his contact, a wiry man with mechanical eyebrows that twitched like anxious insects. He wore a faded suit and an expression that screamed "I know a guy" even before he opened his mouth. Elian Rourke, you smuggler of sadness. You look alive. Mostly. Jax, Elian said. Still running scams disguised as trades. Still breathing air that isn't court-mandated, Jax replied, grinning. What brings you and your cloaked companion? This is Vera. She hates everything. I respect that. We need information. Something about a pre-drift Alari pod being jettisoned from a freighter last cycle. Jax's grin faded. You don't dabble in light topics, huh? Only at breakfast. Jax waved them toward the back, where a curtain of magnetic beads buzzed ominously. Inside, the lights were dim, and the walls were lined with memory cores, glowing blocks of recorded data, flickering with ancient static. Jax connected one to a projector. A grainy image sputtered to life, the freighter Luxterra 7, orbiting a mining moon. A pod detached. Faint heat trails. No logs. No transmissions. No record after that. It disappeared, Jax said. Like someone didn't want it found. Vera watched silently. Jax hesitated. Look, I don't get into Alari business. You folks went dark after the collapse. But word is, someone's putting out bounties. Quiet ones. High-paying. And the only thing they hate more than humans, is traitors. Vera's jaw tightened. Elian stepped forward. What kind of someone? Jax hesitated. A ship called the Varellan. Not officially Alari anymore, but their crew. Old blood. Zealots. They don't follow governments. They follow ghosts. Vera finally spoke. If they're hunting me, we need to leave. Now. Jax nodded. Fast, if you want to stay, alive-shaped. They returned to the Perseverance in silence. Even the cube had stopped purring. Elian fired up the engines, staring into the void as the car station shrank behind them. Vera stood beside him, arms crossed tightly. You okay? He asked. No. Well, if it helps, I'm stocked with panic snacks. For flavors, salt, regret, bitterness, and mildly irradiated. She almost smiled. I know what the Varellan is, she said quietly. They're the remnants of the old order. Fanatics. I ran from them before. I thought I'd hidden well enough. You didn't. But you've got me now. That's not exactly comforting. It's not meant to be. It's just true. They flew in silence for a while. Then Vera said, "You were right. That cube is defective. It tried to eat my glove." Elian blinked. Okay, now I believe it likes you. She finally laughed, just once, just softly. But it was real. And in the depths of space, between the warning beacons and the rumors of ships that hunted silence, that single laugh rang louder than any alarm. The Varellan came into view like a myth returning from the grave. It didn't warp in with flare, nor announce its presence with flares or sirens. It simply was, suddenly, inescapably, hanging in the darkness behind the Perseverance like a shadow that had always been there, just beyond the edge of knowing. Vera saw it first. "Elian," she said, voice sharp. "Yeah." She pointed to the navigation display. One blip. No identifier. No beacon ping. No transponder hum. Just a silent mass of metal idling too close for comfort. "That's not normal," she said. "Nope," Elian agreed. "That's the interstellar equivalent of someone breathing down your neck at a urinal." Humans have the worst metaphors. We work with what we've got. The Perseverance's proximity sensors began to flicker erratically. They weren't being jammed, they were being read. Every sensor ping they sent out was caught, mirrored, and quietly returned with a slightly different frequency, like a predator tapping on the hull to see what kind of bones it might crack. "They're listening," Vera said. Elian didn't respond. His hands danced across the controls, shifting the ship into evasive drift. No sharp movements. No obvious panic. He'd once outrun a customs patrol by pretending to be a malfunctioning garbage barge. Subtlety had its uses. "You think they know we know they know we know?" he asked. Vera gave him a blank stare. "Never mind." He angled away, nudging the Perseverance into a lazy orbital arc around a nearby ice moon. Its surface gleamed like shattered glass, craters catching light from a nearby binary star. The Varellan followed, matching speed but not closing the gap. "What do they want?" Elian asked, quiet now. "Me." That wasn't an open invitation. "They're testing us. Seeing how we react. I've seen this before." Elian raised an eyebrow. "Did it end well?" "No." "Ah. Encouraging." The Varellan was shaped like a dagger, long, narrow, etched with runes that shimmered faintly even in the vacuum of space. No visible weapons. No comms. Just quiet menace. It wasn't painted so much as inscribed, a vessel not built, but grown, like some massive biomechanical reef evolved to haunt the void. Vera leaned closer to the viewport. "The crew will be old blood. Exiles. The last of the Flame Guard." Sounds dramatic. They are. Fanatics with war songs and genetic modifications to enhance psionic resonance. They believe in purity. Tradition. Burning things that make them uncomfortable. Cool. Love those. You joke too easily. And you worry too loudly. I'm trying to keep us alive. And I'm trying to keep us sane. They drifted in tense silence for a moment. Then a chime sounded. A transmission request. Elian hesitated. Then opened the channel. At first, there was only static. Then a voice. Low. Smooth. Female. Eerily calm. "Vera Antelleri. Daughter of the Fracture. Your flame has not gone out. Return, and be judged." Vera paled slightly. "I hate how they talk like that," she muttered. Elian replied on the open channel. Sorry, Vera's unavailable at the moment. Can I take a message? There was a long pause. Then, you are irrelevant. Wow, Elian said. That's fair. Vera pulled him aside, out of the transmitter's range. They won't fire here. Not unless provoked. The old codes prohibit violence in celestial grav zones. Elian blinked. We're in a grav zone. No. But they think we are. That's enough. I love how you play with galactic laws like they're expired coupons. They're more like optional menu items. Now listen, there's a refueling station 6 minutes away at full thrust. It's neutral ground. We get there, they won't follow. Won't or shouldn't. Same thing, if we're fast. Elian punched in the coordinates. The Perseverance roared to life. The Virelin stirred. It didn't fire. Instead, a hatch opened on its side, and from it emerged a second shape, sleek, needle-like, fast. Of course they brought a skirmisher, Elian said, grimacing. That's just inconsiderate. The chase began in earnest. The Perseverance wasn't a warship. It wasn't even particularly aerodynamic, if space cared about such things. But it was nimble, duct-taped in clever ways, and armed with 2 EMP flares Elian had bought from a drunk trader named Sparkle Pete. Hang on, he shouted, as the skirmisher closed the distance. Vera held onto the ceiling pipe with one hand, her other glowing faintly as she focused, sending a telepathic echo through the ship's hull. They're trying to force-lock our engine, she said. Can you block it? I'm trying. The ship jerked violently. Alarms howled. The cube on the dashboard squealed. I think the cube's scared, Elian said. It should be. The skirmisher began to spin, projecting a spiral wave of psionic noise meant to disrupt thought. Elian's vision blurred. Vera gritted her teeth, muttering in her own language, a series of sharp syllables that sounded like someone arguing with the universe. Then, pop, she unleashed a pulse through the Perseverance's psionic mesh, overloading their own sensors temporarily. The skirmisher flinched. Just enough. Elian dropped an EMP flare. The resulting detonation wasn't large, but it scrambled the smaller ship's controls. It careened off course, spinning end over end into the void. The Perseverance coasted hard into the approach vector of the station, a floating spire wrapped in antennae and protective energy nets. It looked like a sea urchin designed by a paranoid engineer. Welcome to Sanos Relay, chirped an automated voice. Please do not dock while on fire. We're just smoldering, Elian muttered. They landed with a thud that suggested the ship might complain about it later. Inside the station, everything was calm. 100 species moved quietly through air that smelled faintly of old plastic and ionized mint. Vera pulled her cloak tighter. Elian looked around, half expecting the Virelin crew to materialize in the shadows. Think we lost them? For now, she said. You all right? I'm fine. You always say that right before threatening to mind-crush someone. Only if provoked. He bought 2 cups of something claiming to be tea and handed one to her. What flavor is this? She asked. Vague. They drank in silence, watching the stars drift past the station's observation dome. For a while, the quiet felt less like fear and more like peace. Then Vera said, softly, they won't stop. You know that, right? I figured. They'll follow us to the ends of the void. Well, Elian said, smiling tiredly. Then we'd better make the journey interesting. And for the first time since she'd come aboard, she didn't argue. The surface of the dead moon was covered in ash. Gray, granular dust shifted under the Perseverance's landing struts as Elian powered down the ship. Outside, the landscape stretched in jagged silence. Broken spires of dark glass protruded from the crust like petrified lightning, remnants of an ancient war or a particularly aggressive geological tantrum. In the distance, a pale aurora flickered across the black sky, silent and eerie, its light refracted through the moon's fractured magnetosphere. "This place is, homie," Elian said, tightening the straps on his pressure suit. "I give it 4 out of 5 stars on the most likely to be haunted by radioactive ghosts scale." Vera stood beside him, already suited and silent, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The moon, once known as Alenthus, had been a data vault for Ilari scientists during the last century of the Stellar Accord. Vera had traced a whisper of a signal here, something she called a soul pulse, a kind of low-frequency psionic residue only detectable to her kind. "I can feel them," she said softly, almost reverently. "The echoes." "Echoes of what?" "Everything we lost." "That's a lot of echo for one moon." She didn't respond. Just opened the airlock and stepped out onto the desolate terrain without waiting for him. Right. No big speech. No heroic music. Just moonwalking like it's a casual Tuesday. The two of them advanced into the dust, their footfalls muffled by vacuum and static. A jagged crevasse opened before them, its mouth wide and lined with crystalline ridges that glowed faintly when Vera passed. "This way," she said. "Sure." Into the spooky crevice glowing at us like a hungry throat. What could go wrong? She descended first, graceful even on the unstable ground. Elian followed, less graceful and far more vocal about every slipping rock. After 10 meters, the narrow gorge widened into a dome-shaped cavern, a natural vault carved by ancient lava flows and reinforced with alien tech. Strange, circuit-like vines clung to the walls, pulsing in soft blue. In the center sat the relic. It resembled a throne made of collapsed geometry, its shape wrong in ways Elian's brain didn't appreciate. Angles bent in defiance of physics. A hovering ring spun lazily around it, humming with unreadable energy. Vera approached slowly. Elian hung back. "Want me to poke it with a stick?" "It's not a bear. Still might bite." Vera placed a hand on the relic. Her body tensed. The ring stopped spinning. A wave of psionic energy pulsed outward, gentle, but unmistakable. Elian staggered. "Ow. That went right through my teeth." The cavern lit with projections, memories, disjointed and flickering. Holograms of people long gone, Ilari scientists, children, soldiers. And then a star map. Systems highlighted. Coordinates marked in red. Vera breathed out slowly. "This is it. A memory seed. It holds the last archive before the fracture. My people buried it here to preserve truth." Elian walked around it cautiously. "Looks like an angry art exhibit." She turned. "It's more than that. This is proof. Of what happened. Of who caused it. Let me guess, humans." She frowned. "No. At least, not entirely. It was us. Our leaders. Their fear of your expansion. They staged an incursion. Blamed it on Earth. It spiraled. We lost control. My mother, she was part of the council that lied." Elian blinked. "Wait. Mother? She died defending the lies she helped build. And you?" "I tried to reveal the truth. They branded me a traitor." "Well," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "This got complicated fast." Suddenly, the relic surged. A psychic backlash exploded outward, memories, raw and unfiltered, burst into their minds. Elian saw flashes. A burning starship, screams in an alien tongue, a young Vera shouting as armored figures dragged her away. Vera collapsed to her knees. Elian rushed forward. "Hey. Hey. Talk to me." "I'm fine," she whispered, clutching her head. "It's just, loud. Too much. No. Not enough." She reached into the relic's heart, retrieving a data crystal no larger than a coin. It pulsed with a living light. "This," she said, holding it tightly, "is the last unbroken truth. Let me guess, we're now in deeper trouble than ever." Before she could answer, the relic gave a final pulse, and died. The lights winked out. Above them, the ground trembled. "I don't like that," Elian said. That felt like a foreshadowing quake. Back on the surface, they saw why. The Varellan was descending. A smaller vessel had already landed near the Perseverance, sleek, black, and radiating menace. Elian stared. "How are they always one step behind us? Do they have a psychic bloodhound?" "They're tracking the seed," Vera said. "They know I activated it." Elian handed her his emergency pack. "We run?" "No." She looked at him, and for once, not with distance or disdain. "We fight." "Okay," he said, tightening his harness. "But just for the record, I'm terrible at heroics. I cry when I stub my toe. Just don't get captured." "Fair. Same to you." As the enemy approached, tall, armored figures with faces hidden behind mirrored visors, Vera stepped forward. "I am Vera Antelleri," she called, her voice ringing clear across the dust. "Daughter of the fracture. Bearer of the truth." They stopped. One of them removed their helmet. A woman, older, hair streaked silver, eyes glowing faintly. "Sister," she said. Vera froze. "Talia?" The woman nodded. "Come home. The truth dies with you." Elian raised a finger. "Okay, family reunion, great timing, love the drama, but maybe less murdering." The woman looked at him. "And who are you?" "I'm just the guy who flies the junky ship and makes bad decisions." She raised a hand. Energy flared. And Vera moved, fast, fluid, fire in her veins. The fight began. Not with blasters. Not with fists. But with memory. Vera opened the crystal. And everything shattered. For exactly 12 seconds, the universe held its breath. The Ilari memory crystal flared in Vera's hand, and light poured from it, not in beams or rays, but in layered patterns that spiraled outward, forming vast glyphs in the air, like the DNA of a vanished language being rewritten across space. The enemies froze mid-step. The air trembled. Then the world broke open. Elian was knocked backward by the force of the psychic blast, skidding across the ash like a clumsy meteor. The Perseverance's hull groaned in protest. Dust rose in great swirling clouds, and every ship on the moon, friend or foe, shook as if gripped by the hand of something ancient and unseen. When he staggered to his feet, Vera was floating. Not high, not glowing, not transformed into a being of pure energy, which he was admittedly a little disappointed about, but suspended by the psionic field now surging from the crystal. The relic stored truths were broadcasting across the system, visible to every psionically attuned being, encoded into the telemetry of every listening satellite, scattered like stardust into the void. Images played in the air around them. Vera's people, once noble, once united, fractured by fear. The staged attacks. The falsified logs. The lies. The humans hadn't started the war. They'd simply been the match struck in a room already soaked in fuel. The memory faded. And the wind stopped. Vera lowered gently to the ground. Around her, the remaining flame guard, those who had followed Talia, stood silent. Helmets off. Eyes down. No one spoke. Then Talia, her face carved from stone, stepped forward. "You betrayed us," she said quietly. "I told the truth," Vera replied. Talia's expression did not change. "That's worse." For a long time, they stood in stillness, the kind of silence that felt earned. Elian limped over. "So, is this where we hug it out or?" Talia ignored him. You think this will redeem you? She asked Vera. That truth will restore what we lost. No, Vera said. But it might stop someone else from making the same mistake. Talia looked at her sister for a long time. Then turned, walked past her, and motioned for her soldiers to follow. No threats. No farewell. Just retreat. Elian exhaled. Well. That wasn't nearly as murdery as expected. Vera said nothing. She stared at the relic, now inert and silent. You did it, Elian said gently. They know now. The truth's out. She shook her head slowly. That was never the hard part. What was? Living with it. They returned to the Perseverance in silence. The ship's engines, miraculously, still worked. Elian promised to give them a vacation after this. Maybe even a tune-up. A real one. Not just more duct tape and optimistic button-pushing. Inside the cockpit, Vera slumped into the co-pilot seat and stared out the viewport. Where will you go? He asked. She thought for a moment. Nowhere. Great. Because that's exactly where I'm headed. She glanced sideways. I've seen humans lie without blinking. Kill without remorse. Build empires on other people's bones. He nodded. That's us. Real charmers. But I've also seen you eat cheese out of a tube and cry at an animated movie about a lonely moon whale. Lunar solitude is deep, okay? She smiled. Actually smiled. Then added, you're still unbearable. And yet, you fell asleep on my shoulder. Never again. Promises, promises. They laughed, together this time. And it felt earned. Later, as the Perseverance sailed past the binary stars of the Aura's cluster, Vera stood in the observation deck, watching the light bend across the shields. Her reflection was faint in the glass. Long ears twitching slightly, her eyes less guarded now. Elian joined her, 2 cups of vague tea in hand. Don't ask what flavor, he said, handing one over. The box just said, possibly mint. She sipped. Grimaced. It's definitely not mint. Yeah, I'm getting hints of disappointment and battery acid. They stood in companionable silence. Finally, Vera said, I never thanked you. For what? The sarcasm? The life-endangering detours? For staying. When you didn't have to. He looked at her. That's the thing, Vera. Somewhere along the way, I wanted to. She set her tea down and looked out again. I think I still hate most humans. Totally fair. But maybe not all. I'll take that as a personal victory. Outside, the stars shifted. The Perseverance cruised onward, old but stubborn, held together by wit, luck, and something that looked suspiciously like a spoon wedged into the coolant panel. They had no destination. No mission. No prophecy to fulfill. Just 2 travelers who had crossed war, truth, and silence, and come out laughing. And in the quiet that followed, Vera leaned, not quite obviously, but not accidentally either, against Elian's arm. I'm not asleep, she warned. Noted. I just don't want to stand alone right now. Elian nodded. Yeah. Me neither. They stayed like that, watching the stars pass. And for the first time in a long time, the universe felt a little less vast. And a lot less empty.